Hello and welcome. I'm N1bn. Tonight, Independent National Electoral Commission INEC sacks Cross River State Resident Electoral Commissioner Franklin Brie hours after his resignation and declaration of Bayelsa governorship bid. Economic and Financial Crimes Commission EFCC to arraign PDP presidential candidate's lawyer Uyekbengiwa Osage and son-in-law Abdullahi Babalele next Wednesday over money laundering charges. Less than 24 hours after President Buhari's directive, Defense Headquarters sets a panel to investigate killing of 3 policemen by soldiers in Taraba State. And China orders Hong Kong-based airline Cathay Pacific to suspend any staff who supports pro-democracy protests following peaceful rally at Hong Kong's airport terminal.
On business news tonight, analysts expect Nigeria's inflation to taper in the month of July ahead of the upcoming harvest.
In sports news tonight, Saudi Arabia emerges venue for Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz Jr.'s IBF, WBA and WBO heavyweight titles rematch on December the 7th.
And from Abuja, commercial bus drivers ground vehicular traffic on the Abuja-Kaduna highway to protest killing of their colleague, allegedly by a police officer, over 1,000 naira bribe.
Once again, welcome. The sledgehammer of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, today fell on its resident electoral commissioner in Cross River State over alleged unlawful action, contrary to the code of conduct of INEC officials. The commission relieved Mr. Franklin Brie of his duties shortly after he officially announced his resignation and declared his intention to contest the November governorship election in Bayelsa State. Our political correspondent, Shion Okinbaloye, has been following the actions of both the electoral umpire and a man in the eye of the storm, Mr. Franklin Brie.
Gaily dressed and takes a tour of the Cross River State INEC facility, perhaps for the last time. The INEC's resident electoral commissioner in charge of Cross River State is done with his work here. Dr. Franklin Brie throws in the towel.
I have resigned my appointment as a resident electoral commissioner in the Independent National Electoral Commission of the Federal Republic of Nigeria with effect from Thursday, 8th of August 2019.
His reason is not far-fetched. He wants to go partisan, and the governorship seat of Bayelsa State is on his mind.
For the sake of the very important call to rescuing the kind, peace-loving and great people of Bayelsa State.
About 24 hours later, Dr. Brie's action gets the attention of his employer, the national body of the nation's Electoral Commission. The electoral body says it has relieved him of his duties for using INEC's premises to make a political announcement. The commission therefore asks its administrative secretary in Cross River State to take over the duties of the REC. Experts say the decision of Dr. Franklin Brie has both legal and moral perspectives.
If it's established that he has been a member of a political party before he tendered his resignation, then he would have breached the Constitution. And to make it worse, he declared his intention to run on resignation in INEC's office. And I consider it immoral and very, very scandalous and a dangerous precedent that should be condemned.
They say the Bayelsa man's action has now put the electoral umpire in a tough position and perhaps a difficult situation for INEC.
Yeah, the point of morality is that you can't have an umpire who is respected and expected to deal with electoral matters fairly, jumping into the arena for himself, and the impression that is being given is that INEC itself is so closely connected to the political arena that you cannot trust it to have men of neutrality and credibility at all times who can stay away from participating from the game. And that is dangerous for the political integrity and electoral sanctity of the country.
Experts say as long as Mr. Brie's resignation is not transmitted to the president, it still remains a REC based on the provision of the law. INEC will have to get a replacement sometime soon, But Mr. Breye appears to have begun a race on a turf he has always superintended. Seun Okimalue, Channels Television News.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, will on August the 14th arraign the lawyer up to PDP presidential candidate Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and his son-in-law for alleged money laundering. While Alhaji Atiku's son-in-law, Babalele Abdullahi, is facing 2 charges, and the lawyer Uyi Giwa Osage and his brother Eruse Giwa Osage face 3 counts at the Federal High Court in Lagos for allegedly laundering $2 million in the build-up to this year's general elections. The Anti-Graft Commission alleges that Babalele Abdullahi procured one Bashir Mohammed to make cash payment, sum of $140,000 on the part of Mr. Uyi Giwa Osage and Eruse Giwa Osage, conspired to commit an offense, making cash payment of a sum of $2 million without going through a financial institution, with some exceeded the amount authorized by law and thereby committed an offense contrary to Section 18 of the Money Laundering Prohibition Act of 2011 as amended. The arrest and arraignment is coming 5 months after Babalele Abdullahi and Giwa Osage were detained for several days while being interrogated over a multi-million-dollar money laundering probe. Staying with legal matters, the former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Maurice, has been granted bail by Justice Chuka Obiozo of the Federal High Court sitting in Ikoyi, Lagos. Justice Obiozo granted bail to the tune of 1 billion naira and 2 sureties and ruled that Professor Iwu must not communicate with any of the witnesses in the case. The former INEC chairman is facing a full count of concealment, fraud and money laundering of $1.2 billion, in which he has pleaded not guilty, 1.2 billion naira. In the charge, the EFCC claims that Professor Iwu allegedly aided the concealment of the sum of 1,203 million naira between December 2014 and March 2015. The money is believed to be part of the 23.29 billion naira slush fund allegedly shared by former Petroleum Minister Desiani Alison Madueke to influence the outcome of the 2015 presidential elections. Professor Iwu has pleaded not guilty to these charges. In the meantime, the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja, the nation's capital, has asked parties in a suit filed by 4 aggrieved members of the Kogi State Executive Committee of the All Progressives Congress to maintain status quo pending the hearing and the determination of the suit on August the 19th, 2019. They are seeking for an order of court to restrain the party from adopting the indirect voting mode in selecting its candidate for the forthcoming governorship election in the state. The plaintiff, who are members of the State Executive Committee, as well as delegates in the primary election slated for August the 29th, predicated their actions on the grounds that the indirect system of voting, if allowed, will not provide a fair and level playing ground for all participants. In a ruling on an ex parte application, Justice Taiwo held that in view of the urgency of the matter, it will be better to give accelerated hearing to the main suit rather than grant the interim injunction being sought.
Court was of the view that, well, the application won't be granted as prayed, but that he will abridge the time for parties to file papers, and in the interim, other parties to maintain status quo so that nothing should be done to defeat the subject matter. The implication of that is that, as we speak, the party is not at liberty to proceed with that indirect primaries until this matter is conclusively determined. And the court bent over backward to fix 19th of August to hear the matter. So that's what happened in court.
Staying with legal matters, the convener of the Revolution Now protest, Mr. Omoyele Sowore, has filed a motion on notice seeking an order of the Federal High Court to set aside this charge and vacate the ex parte order of the court for his detention for a period of 45 days. The motion filed by his lawyer, Mr. Femi Falana, on behalf of the AAC presidential candidate is predicated on 18 grounds, including that the said order breached the fundamental right provisions of the 1999 Constitution as amended, and that his detention for an initial 4-day period before the grant of the ex parte order is illegal by virtue of Section 35 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. He also maintains that the order brought on Anti-Terrorism Act 2013 was obtained by the Department of State Services to legalize his illegal detention. Mr. Falana has added that motion ex parte was predicated on suppression and misrepresentation of material facts based on wrong presumption and mistake, thereby constituting a gross abuse of court processes. He insists that the DSS, in its motion, did not disclose any fact capable of linking Mr. Sowore to any terrorism activity. Mr. Sowore was arrested on Sunday, August the 4th in Lagos for planning the Revolution Now protest. Meanwhile, a faction of the African Action Congress AAC has associated the party from the Revolution Now protest organized by the said Mr. Omoyele Sowore, the ACC presidential candidate in the last presidential election. The factional chairman of the party, Leonard Nzenwa, condemned the action of Mr. Sowore, describing it as unconstitutional and undemocratic. He was speaking during the national convention of the party in Owerri, the Imo State capital. The leadership of the party thereafter announced the expulsion of Mr. Sowore and 30 other members of the party on alleged financial impropriety and engaging in unconstitutional acts that are contrary to the party's principles. Mr. Nzenwa, who was also elected as the new national chairman of the party after a successful voting process. And let's talk security matters now. Less than 24 hours after the President directed the nation's service chiefs to immediately launch an investigation into the killing of the 3 police officers by soldiers in Taraba State, the Chief of Defense Staff has now constituted a 7-man joint investigation team to carry out this task. The investigative team is headed by Rear Admiral Ibikule Olaya, with representatives from the Nigerian Army, Navy, Air Force, the Nigeria Police, Department of State Services, and the Defense Intelligence Agency. The statement from the Acting Director of Information in the Defense Headquarters, Colonel Onyema Nwachukwu, says the Joint Investigation Panel has a task to unravel the circumstances that led to the unfortunate incident. And now the recent plan by the Enugu state government to engage forest guards and neighborhood watch groups to secure rural areas across the 17 local government areas of Enugu state has been commended by the Enugu State Council of Traditional Rulers. The new strategies have become necessary following the recent killing of a priest and kidnapping of traditional ruler and his wife and another rising communal crisis. According to the traditional rulers who met with Governor Ogwani at the Government House, they say they will continue to work to ensure a safe environment for residents of Enugu State.
Traditional rulers across the 17 local government areas of Enugu State and autonomous communities in Enugu make their way into the Government House. They are here on a security review meeting with the State Governor Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi following the recent killing of a priest, the kidnapping of a traditional ruler and his wife, and other communal crises. One of the key issues on the table is the implementation of the plan to engage forest guards and neighborhood watch in securing rural areas across the state.
We are the traditional rulers here assembled were in support of all the measures he has taken to secure Enugu State and ensure that we have continued to retain our first position as the most peaceful state in the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
While some of the monarchs are optimistic about the plan, others commend the swift response of the government.
The traditional rulers shall realign whatever measure they have with the town union and then the entire members of the community. So I do know that before long, better stories shall be told.
If all Igwe will do as I wish I'll be doing in my own community, peace, Enugu State will be the most beautiful state in Nigeria.
The state governor, Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi, assures the rulers of his commitment to security and receives special prayer from the traditional monarchs.
To imbue him with greater wisdom than he already has.
In part 2, after the break, Benue state government begins demolition of illegal structures and shanties built in floodplains in Makurdi to contain ravaging flood. Please stay with us.